turn your phone off. You're live.
I'm live, yay!
Congratulations!
We did it, okay. We did it. Thank you, Jen. So we've been having some technical difficulties. Thank you, Tina, for volunteering your phone. So just a few technical difficulties, but I'm Eka and I'm here on behalf of the Front Royal Women's Resource Center for our last Woman Gathering of the year, and I'm very excited to be with Susie MacNelly.
Hi, everybody.
Yay! And Susie is the main person that is behind Shoo, the comic, right?
And my merry band of pranksters.
Your merry band of pranksters?
Yeah, it's
okay.
For one person to be funny every day, it's impossible, pretty much, except for maybe Dave Barrett and Mike Peters. But I work with 3 writers, and I write, but I'm the only one who can spell.
Okay.
So that's what and punctuate. So I bring that to the table, and a certain amount of serious silliness.
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah.
Some are silly, but they usually have a message.
Oh yeah,
An embedded message, right?
It all started with my late husband, Jeff MacNelly, who was really the wonderful genius behind Shoo and editorial cartooning, and it all emanates from him. He's been gone for 18 years, but we have carried on. And our mission is just to help people start the day with a giggle, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
In this world that maybe isn't so funny sometimes.
Yeah.
But we managed to pull it off, which is amazing.
It is amazing. And someone was asking me, do you do it once every week? And I'm like, every day. Don't you every day?
Well, we do it, not really. It depends. All the writers submit gags once a week, and if it's a really good, it depends. If it's a really good week and there are lots of gags, we might be able to go for a couple of weeks. It kind of depends on what the writing is like, because the art's really important, but it really is about the writing.
Yes. Okay, so I'm sure everybody has lots of questions, like I did, about it too. But thank you very much for coming and
My
bringing
pleasure.
Bringing your books, and there's you're celebrating an anniversary, right?
That's what caused this to manifest. It's she was 40 years old. Actually,
Wow.
was 40 years old last year.
Okay.
So we, my syndicate called me up one day and said, "Hey, we've got a book deal for you." And it's like, no, because it's a lot of hard work.
Uh-huh.
It takes a long time, and this book wouldn't have happened without Philip,
Hi, Philip.
the royal archivist. And
yeah, 4 months to do a year's worth of work.
Oh, wow.
It
To
was.
go through a year of stuff?
They called me in June, and the deadline was December, which is not. And this was an anthology, so
Okay.
it was.
So
really,
you went through all the years of, okay.
and it was pedal to the metal. It really it was. And Philip was instrumental in.
Well, it was written as a history, even though there's not a lot of dialogue about the history in there.
Mm-hmm.
We did it according to eras because Jeff changed the way his style several times, but the main thing was he changed the style from when it's initiated in September of '77 through 84 or 85. Then he wanted to do it faster, so he rounded some of the beaks and didn't do so much cross-hatching to make filter. Then again, when Chris Cassatt came along, who Susie will tell you about, who helped digitalize it, that changed it again. Then when he died in 2000, that created another era until 2013, when Chris Cassatt died of the same lovely lymphoma that Jeff passed away from until now.
Yeah.
Where Gary Brookins is continuing, and I'll let Susie tell you all
So,
about that.
so Jeff, and I actually remember when she first came out,
Oh, you
because
do?
I was a dedicated Washington Post reader from the time I was 12.
Oh.
And of course I'd always look at the comics, and I remember when it came out and I thought, oh, this is really cool, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
He was an overnight success, and it was ironic that Gary Brookins, who draws it now, was just putting the finishing touches on a comic strip about birds.
Is that right?
we kind of rained on his parade, but he's wonderful. Just a great guy, great illustrator, great artist, and wonderful person all around.
So does he actually do the art?
He does.
Okay, so originally, Jeff, your ex-husband, your late husband,
He's very late. I don't think he's coming.
You don't think he's coming? Did he do the artwork and the writing of it? Or
he did. When we met, which was in 1989, he was the only big cartoonist who worked alone. Everybody else had staffs, serious staffs.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to manage anybody. He was just that kind of guy.
So he must have been a real genius and creative to be.
He just came out of the womb fully formed, and he could do portraits when he was 3-4 years old.
Is that right? Wow.
I know. And Dave Barry really describes him well. He says he was a nice guy who just happened to be a genius. And he was so modest. He was just so unique in that regard.
Yeah.
And because of that, I just can't tolerate pretension, of any, any sort.
Well, how did you all meet?
In a bar. We were actually introduced by a couple who was close friends, and I was in my mid-40s. I'd never been married, didn't really think I was marriage material, and our friends sort of set it up very loosely, and Steve Daly, who was just a great guy, worked with Jeff at the Chicago Tribune. He said to Jeff had been married a few times, so he was kind of, nervous. And so Steve told him that if he didn't like what he saw, there was a back door. It was Child Herald. There was a back door, and he could leave. Anyway, he didn't leave. I knew I was going to marry him in 5 minutes.
Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
It was lightning. It was kismet.
Wow.
And we were married for 10 years. And never had a fight.
Wow.
I know.
That is really amazing.
It is.
And now he told you something when you met, because he told me.
He said,
this one.
I've been drawing you for 12 years, and that's Roz, the character.
Right here, Roz?
Yeah, behind the bar. And I'd been in the bar business for years. And some of that time I was a bartender, and then I went on to become a caterer and had a little business in Washington.
Yeah.
And so he said, I've been, she's a redheaded weirdo. And he said, I've just been drawing you for years. And I remember our first big yuck was I said I was from New Hampshire. And he said, oh, your social security number starts with 001, doesn't it? I said, how did you know that? Because his first job was a counselor at a camp in New Hampshire called Camp Monadnock. And so his social was 001. And kind of a funny, peculiar story. After he had died, a couple years after he had died, my niece had just graduated from college and was getting a new car, and she needed a co-signature. So I signed for her, and they called her and said that her application had been rejected because I was dead. What had happened, because we had those the numbers starting with the same digits, somehow it got cattywampus and got reversed, and I was dead.
Oh.
And it took me at least 6 months of serious work to get
To
undone.
be alive again.
Oh, you can't make
Very
this crap
Halloween.
up.
There was a Golden Girls episode like that.
Oh, really? Oh, I'll never forget when I got all this documentation and went to the Fauquier Bank where the loan was trying to originate, and the people were looking at me like I had 3 heads because they were sure that I was
That
dead.
you were dead.
It was night of the living weirdo. Oh my God! It's like does this stuff happen to everybody? Yes.
You're special.
In an Olympic sense.
So when you all met, how did he immediately bring you into the
No,
writing and?
I was, I was running my catering business, so no. And it was funny. His financial advisor said to me, I think this was before we got married. He said, "You don't want to have anything to do with the business, do you?" And he said that because Jeff's previous wife had wanted to be in the business and messed it up in a fabulous fashion. So, but after a while, things changed, and the financial advisor was begging me. So I started taking over some of the business stuff. But I'd always been a writer, as a younger person, and kind of the class clown. I just always liked making people laugh. And so I think what was the first strip I wrote? It was a PSD.
Are you talking about
It was
Poor Squirrel Decision?
Yeah.
It's in the book, actually. I put it in there
Okay.
because it's part of the history.
And
Her first.
Okay, great.
yeah, so that sort of initiated me starting to get into the creative side of it. But for all those 10 years, I really took care of the business, and anything that Jeff didn't want to do, I did, because I just felt like any moment that he wasn't making art or building something was stupid for him. And so, and he used to say, if he had to answer the phone, he said, the cartoon factory is to shut down. He hated the phone. Only if he was going to, get some laughs from the conversation.
Right.
Then, he would condescend to talk on the phone, but he hated the phone. He was phonophobic.
Okay. And you're a real communicator, so.
Yeah.
Well, how did you end up then really getting integrated and actually taking over this part?
When he got sick and died, it was pretty quick. It was a 6-month thing, and then he just kind of flamed out. He was gone. So Chris Cassette was his assistant, and we took a couple of weeks off just to kind of slap ourselves around and just keep moving. And so I just moved right into being part of the creative end of things, and it was just sort of a natural progression, and it was like, well, I guess I have to,
Because you were offering some. I mean, you were kind of participating in it before that. I mean, you had.
I was,
played
but
around with it.
right, but I was doing the licensing and and just business part and.
Okay. So did you know you had this in you?
I did. I had. What was so unique about being with Jeff was that I got to see him entertain the world, and I got to entertain him. And so just being around someone who was that hilarious, what was late? There wasn't much that was late with me, in the humor department, even before I got involved. With Shu, I think the bar business definitely brought out. And I went to a theater school too. I went to Emerson, so that was a wonderful experience. It's just a bunch of crazy people. So I kind of came flying out of the closet as a professional.
And I love talking with you about the old DC days, because I have not heard the name, the Child Herald, for decades, and it's like,
It's
the
not
Child
there.
Herald.
They closed
No, I'm
it.
sure it's not.
I know. I mean, it was just it was DuPont Circle.
Yeah, it was.
You know. And
So anyway, here we are in Front Royal now.
I know. Well, when I was with, I think Kevin took me up to Fredericksburg, and we were talking about the bar business, and it's you know, it was kind of a neat little.
It was a neat time.
Coven.
Yeah, yeah. So take us through, like, I mean, you have an idea, so you work with a couple other people.
I do.
And they're
three of them.
distant, right? It's all.
Yeah, the one's in Chicago, 2 are in California, and every week they submit a bunch of gags
To you.
to me
Okay.
and to Gary,
Mhm.
and if
And Gary's a writer or the art cartoonist?
He's
Or the
both.
art-
He was an
artist.
editorial cartoonist at the Richmond newspaper for years and years, and then they offloaded him. You know, when the newspapers were starting to circle the drain.
Mhm.
And so he's a writer too. Anyway, so we both read the gags, and if a gag is going to get produced, we both have to like it.
Mhm.
So we have these long conversations, and we entertain each other too. I mean, he one thing I just love about him, he had a blind parrot who just passed away at about age 50 that he has had since he was 9 years old.
Wow.
I know. So he was a real bird brain. So everybody just fit in, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the shoe's still around because it was sort of a love deal, with Jeff. Because Gary knew him and Jeff kind of mentored him. Our head writer was a friend of Jeff. So I think we have managed to maintain the voice.
Yes.
That's at the end of the day.
Mhm.
I think that's why we're still in business.
Right.
Because everybody thought we'd go away
Uh-huh.
when Jeff died, but we weren't talking about this at all, but he had wanted to retire from Shoe, and so we had the whole lash up and running when he got sick.
Wow.
And so, I think that's why it's, it's still topical.
It is.
And it's, we were fortunate too, because we were the first cartoonists who went digital. And everybody thought that we were the devil and that we were going to ruin the medium. Of course, it's the standard of how everybody does it now.
Yeah.
So we have this vast digital library of Jeff's art.
Oh.
So we can plug in like stock scenes in the strip, are in our library. But Gary draws at least half of it.
Wow.
And he does it on an iPad Pro, just like this.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Because he does it right on here.
And he's as I
Wow.
said, he's a great artist.
Yeah.
And so we're still yucking it up.
So at the beginning or at some point in the week, you got a bunch of ideas.
On Fridays, yeah.
On Fridays. So things have to be, it has to be a pretty quick turnaround to keep it pace with what's happening.
Well, it is, but here the sort of hard part is that what we're doing now will be published in about 5 weeks. So it's sometimes just because of great luck, we'll be right on the money with something. It was like, how did we do that? But it's
Wow.
it's just
I had no idea it would be that long,
Yeah.
5 weeks.
It's different with editorial cartooning. It's different. It's in the next day.
Yeah,
But it's different with comic strips.
yeah.
So-
So you are, because a lot of times when I read it, it's right on.
Oh, I know. It's like, wow. We look really smart. That's amazing.
Well, and I wanted to see any questions. Anybody have any questions right now?
So in the process that you create the strip, does the writing come first and then the artist does the drawing to
Yeah.
go with it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the writing, creates whatever the idea is,
Right.
and so then Gary gets to work, and we have another great guy named Ben who does the color, because the color is a lot. It's time consuming, and it's important. Especially these days, because in a lot of newspapers, the dailies are published in color. They never used to be back in the old days, but they are now.
But do you kind of does someone or perhaps you have the final sort of approval, like,
I do.
we're gonna go with this strip, okay?
I do, and as I said, I'm the only one who could spell.
Well, that's
So I'm
important.
very important. And then
Yeah.
fortunately, I have an editor over me too.
Oh, okay.
Because sometimes, I can miss things. So never are there typos that make it into print, because somebody's
Right.
maybe it happened once in all these years. Something got by the editors at my syndicate, but it's rare. So.
I should have asked you in advance, but do you know if are there any strips in here that you could turn to easily that are your favorite? I'm sure you have a lot of favorites, but.
Let's see. One of the hard parts about doing this was editing. What do you use? What don't you use? And we tried to use.
That's where I come in.
Yeah.
So you did the initial culling.
It was a very unusual year. It was 2016, and in June, she was dealing with the whole estate problem, which we're not going to go into. But I had to do an entire audit of the entire archive. That's 20,000 pieces of artwork. You have to understand, a cartoonist does 30 pieces of artwork a day, whether it be a sketch, or whether it be a doodle, or whether it be an actual tune. Okay, that's on average. Of course, not every day isn't the same. So I have to take care of all that work and keep it, scanned in archive. I used to use a database. I'm not relying on that anymore. It's just way too much to do. I keep everything in files, and that way I know where it is. So I had to do that, find out what hard copy we have, what digital copy we had, and then other copies which are just the pieces of a foot. Because when Chris Kasak came along in '92, he said, I'm going to take that foot, and then we have another that's a leg, and then we have a background and a tree, and that's how it was assembled. He actually would assemble it using Adobe InDesign, was the name of the software, and that became Shoe. Well, when he died in 2012-13,
Yeah.
January, that went to Gary. Gary said, to heck with this. I'm going to do it on my iPad Pro. Well, at that time he was doing it on his computer. Then he got an iPad Pro, came out, and it's so much easier. Thank you, Bill Gates. He was able to knock those out in one piece, and we're able to do it from there, and we share the archive, so I keep that updated.
Okay.
Nevertheless, choosing those, then came along this company was Hearst, was approached by a company in London, or the other way around. Titan Books, who they do a lot of graphic novels. So they put together these graphic novels, and they had started working with Mark Walker and some of the estates of deceased
Johnny Hart.
Johnny Hart, cartoonists. It turns out I used to date his daughter. I didn't even know he was related. That was many years ago. But they put together this whole idea of doing deceased artists and doing these compilations in a hardback book. Now, Jeff has had almost 30 of the little chapbooks that you can pick up in any store of Schultz's, Peanuts, and other people like that. But this was going to be a little more coffee table oriented.
Yes. So you have actually
It's
had one, right?
it's the first one, and you know, you write what you know. Okay, so this was the very first strip in 1977. It's Shu, the editor, at his desk, and the phone rings, and he says, "Hello, this is P. Martin Shoemaker speaking. While I'm out of the office, my calls are being handled by an automatic answering device. If you want to leave a message, start speaking at the sound of the click." And click, he hangs up. That's the click. So
what I had to do-
Jeff's kind of saying like that right there, right?
But
What had to happen from there was I had to choose key pieces that were not necessarily the best pieces, but the pieces that fit in to the history of it.
Okay.
For a Poor Squirrel Decision was this card strip she came up with that was her first one that she actually wrote the gag for. So that's included in there for that reason.
Do you know where that one is in here? Do you know where it is?
I can help find it. Why don't you continue
Okay.
talking? You keep
Yeah.
that one.
That's great. How did it feel having your first comic sent out across the
It's like,
land?
wow.
Did you think you'd be doing that all these
No,
years later?
No, I mean that I'm a character in the funny papers is so crazy. It is. It's just you know, I could never have imagined that, but it was what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, and so I'm after all these years, you know, I'm comfortable with it. It took me years to even put my signature on it. So I was kind of, you know, back of the house, and I think I didn't want to put my name on it because that would mean that Jeff really was not coming back, you know. So, but then they made me do it, and so now, you know, I'm comfortable with it. So I'm a lucky girl. Just to you know, keep Jeff's name alive, and we're going to do a big retrospective exhibit because he was a fabulous fine artist, painting, sculpting, just amazing, and a lot of his art is going to go to the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum at Ohio State, which is the gold standard of cartoon art on the planet, and they're going to do a big retrospective show. I think, is that about 3 years?
We're supposed to do it in 2022.
22, yeah.
Okay.
If I can ever get a hold of them. They, like most cartoonists or cartooning organization, they have over 500 million pieces of artwork that rivals the Smithsonian collection. So they have their own problem.
Right, they're
with
busy.
keeping up.
Yeah, they're busy.
And so they're actually going on to try and get a hold of the assistant curators. A tough job.
It's an amazing museum, though.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
So my sister wanted to ask a question, and she couldn't be on. She said she was going to be tied up at the time we were on here, but she wanted to ask, how do you get your inspiration? Where do you get your inspiration?
It's just like I was saying before. It's from life, you know. And there's just goofiness everywhere, and you. I think you have, especially in sometimes odd situations, that brings up a lot of creative ideas, and you can, you know, look at a situation that might not be funny or might be peculiar, and just kind of spin it just a little bit, and that's you know, that's where the ideas. I think it's this. We do surprise endings because there's this flip where it looks like it's going in one direction and it actually is going someplace else.
Right. And actually the one that you had of the U.S.,
Oh, yeah.
I
that-
love that.
this-
Um,
And so, some of these could have been done early this morning.
We got mixed up.
Where is it?
I'm trying to find one. I'll help you find another in a second. I'm having a hard time finding poor squirrel decision.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to wrap it up too.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I thought
this
was
kind of
really
typifies what's going on in the world
Yeah.
today. This was done 25 years ago.
great. Was it really?
Yep.
Wow.
And history repeats itself,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
that's amazing. Mm.
Well, can I just make a comment? One of the things I really admire about the comic strip is it is so funny, but you have to have a level of intelligence to understand it. I think that maybe Jeff rubbing off on the comic strip. If he was a genius, I didn't know he was, but certainly I can see that from some of the comic strips because I shared with you earlier, cut them out and take them to school and show the kids, and I used to tell them, I said, you have to be intelligent to read the comic strips, not just.
Well, what was unusual about Jeff too was he was a brilliant writer, as well as a brilliant artist. Where is it?
And here's her brilliant
it's-
writing.
So it's Sky and the professor, who's Jeff, in the DeSoto, which I still have at my house rotting.
It is
wow.
a pink 1958
Yeah.
DeSoto.
So Skylar says, "What's that spot on the road?" And Cosmo says, "That's a result of PSD." And Skylar says, "Oh, some chemical pollutant?" And the professor says, "No, poor squirrel decision." That's that.
We've all experienced
Oh,
that.
and boy, I don't know about anybody else, but I am seeing so many squirrels.
Yeah, it's,
There's something going on this year with squirrels.
there's a lot of them.
There are, and I've been seeing them all during the summer. Running with nuts. They're preparing for something, folks.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. But
Oh,
is
this
there
has been
anything that
great.
you had I'm so happy that you came. Thank you.
Oh no, it's been really fun.
Good.
Thanks, you all.
And is there
I
anything that
enjoyed
you
it.
wanted to say to wrap up?
Yeah, read the comics.
Read the comics. Yeah.
If you can't find them
Well,
in your
now-
newspaper, go online.
Yeah.
Because
Shootcomics.com.
online and it's on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it runs in the Winchester paper. I think that's the closest one from here.
The Winchester, okay.
And again, shootcomics.com if you can't get it.
Oh, yeah.
In
Or-
the Northern
or
Virginia
go-
area.
Yeah, or Go Comics. It's on that site. That's the biggest comic site, I think. So we just want to make you laugh.
Your
No,
senses?
no matter how crazy things seem.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Eka.
much. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, I love
All
being
right,
here.
I'm Susie MacNelly of Shoe Comics. Thank you. And Philip, the Royal Archivist.
Thank you.
Philip has
And
job
so-
security.
We're happening coming up, or Joyce?
Well, just briefly, we'll have next Wednesday will be our last networking luncheon of the year. We'll have a woman coming from CASA, which is the Children's Advocate local organization. And then on November 15th, we have our annual membership meeting of the Women's Resource Center, which is for members only, but you can certainly become a member to attend. And then on December 18th will be our holiday celebration right here in the What Matters space. So we hope everybody will come to that. And then we're on to another year.
Yeah, so our next Woman Gathering meeting will be in January. It's always the third Thursday. And I would like to invite anybody watching to please join us if you have not. It's a very small membership fee and it goes to a wonderful organization. We're doing all kinds of great things. So check us out, Front Royal Women's Resource Center, frwrc.org. Thank you all very much and have a good fall.